Welcome to Mythic Albion, a journey through Britain's legends, folklore, and sacred landscapes. I'm your host Tom, and today we follow a hooded man through the woodland shadows of Sherwood Forest. But who was this man adorned in green and brown? Some would say a righteous man standing up for a people against oppression. Some would say a petty thief who would justify anything to take that which did not belong to him. Was he a ghost of rebellion, something we have all felt in ourselves at points in our lives? Was Robin Hood and his merry men a mere story, a story that has been told and retold for hundreds of years? We cautiously tread through a forest dappled in sunlight, long days shortening as autumn approaches. This fact does little to quell the natural sounds of the forest as birdsong and a summer's breeze wind their way through an area of pine trees. But upon closer inspection it would appear that the trees have a great many small branches pointing out. No, not branches, but arrows. A wary person may be fraught and leery at this, a sight enough to stop a traveller dead in their tracks. But a soothing voice coming from nowhere and everywhere urges us to carry on. Such forests were always home to spirits, ghosts of fallen huntsmen or the remnants of ancient pagan deities. A large stag emerges from behind a set of trees. It looks foreboding at first, enormous antlers jutting from either side of its head, more akin to large twisted branches of oak, mottled and dotted with shades of green and brown. The stag stares, with eyes the colour of sunset gold. Words begin to fill the air. Here beginneth a merry jest of Robin Hood and his men and of the proud sheriff of Nottingham. Lithe and listen, gentlemen, that be of Freeborough blowed. As shall you tell of a good yeoman, his name was Robin Hood. Robin was a proud outlaw, whiles he walked on ground. So courtesy an outlaw as he was one, was never none found. Then bespake him Little John, all unto Robin Hood, Master, if ye would dine better me, it would do you much good. We see the stag is now standing at the end of the path on a slope, pine trees leaning close. The light around the stag is so bright, so impossibly white, that all can be seen as a magnificent silhouette. Then the creature is gone, and so are we, as we run towards the light. The river crossing. The forest, quiet that day, found itself replacing the creaking of branches for the rushing of rapid water. A man walking the brown paths, bow over one shoulder, a magnificent sword within a scabbard on his left hip, stepped out by a river bank. The hooded man, dressed in green with a studded leather jerkin, wondered if he may find a likely traveller who may part with gold, for a little redistribution, of course. Seeing if finer luck be found on the other side, he soon found a bridge. But this bridge was narrow, too narrow for livestock, barely wide enough for a wandering stranger. As the man in green crossed, a man in brown was also coming from the other direction. Or was it a man? For he was tall, taller than the man called Robin, 20 hands tall at least, the man in green warranted. As he got closer, he got the full measure of the man. Dressed in brown fatigues, a fur cloak, thick hair and a thicker beard, the man could be forgiven for being more reminiscent of a great brown bear. Broad in the shoulder, he sported 2 large quarterstaffs which were tied to his back at angles. They stopped in front of each other. Robin spoke first. "Good day, friend. Will you be so kind as to stand aside so I may pass?" The giant of a man grinned. "Nay, sir. The day is too fine to be stepping aside for strangers. You'll let me pass first." Robin's left hand instinctively rose to the bow. "There's an old law in Greenwood. You don't shoot a man for blocking his path. You challenge him," cried the large man. His massive forearms crisscrossed behind his head, and he drew the 2 large quarterstaffs. Throwing the one in his left hand with some considerable force, he was surprised to find this green knave deftly catch the weapon. Grinning again, he said, "I'm going to enjoy this." As the larger of the two men strode forward, he was surprised by the speed and agility of the other. Robin came in with a flurry of two-handed thrusts, pushing, attempting to disarm this brute. He was big, aye, but slow. Robin was dancing now, while this man was like a clumsy beast of burden. It wouldn't take long, and then Robin found an opening and thrust hard into the man's thigh. It felt like hitting the hide of a dragon. The large man barely flinched, and before Robin could react, a quarterstaff hit him square in the midsection. He gasped, and he staggered. Robin wasn't even sure what happened next, because another powerful blow sent him tumbling into the stream. The large man bellowed in laughter, not the kind that took delight in a fellow's misfortune, but the kind that represented one of life's enjoyable moments. As Robin looked up, a large hand came down and pulled him dripping to the bridge. "Well met," said the broad man. "You fight well for one so little." Now it was Robin's turn to laugh, wringing water from his hood. "Well met indeed, sir. I'll have you know you've won yourself an invitation to join the finest company of outlaws in all of England. Tell me, though, what is your name?" "John Little," replied the towering man, who was now leaning against his staff, studying Robin. "Little John, is it? Well then, Little John you shall be, and Little John you will be for the rest of your days." And thus began a friendship that would shake the Sheriff of Nottingham to his core. The Sheriff. Not long after Little John joined the band, word came that the Sheriff of Nottingham himself was riding through Sherwood Forest, heavy with men and heavy with a day's worth of tax silver. He was bound for the castle. Robin had other intentions, as he lay in wait with the merry men. Little John struck up a question with Robin. "Where we shall take, where shall we leave? Where shall we abide behind? Where shall we rob? Where shall we reave? Where shall we bait and bind?" Robin tells John that they shall never hurt farmers, good yeomen, knights or squires, but soon adds, "These bishops and archbishops ye shall them bait and bind. The High Sheriff of Nottingham, hold him in ye mind." They waited where the path narrowed between the two old oaks, trees so wide that three men could not link arms around them. Little John took the right side. A young man adorned in the finest red took the left, a striking contrast to the greens and browns of the forest and his companions. A handsome man, quick-moving, whose personality often mirrors the exterior red, fiery, impulsive, and a bold visible challenge to authority. His name was Will Scarlet, and he was the finest swordsman of the merry men, save for perhaps the Saracen. Robin crouched in the branches above, bow drawn, eyes sharp, the words of the sheriff carrying on the wind ever closer. The sheriff's voice propelled ahead of him. A man dressed aptly in black, with long black hair and a pointed beard, loud, entitled, and lecturing his men about the perils of outlaws and the ingrate peasantry. "Those people should be happy to hand over their money. Do they think foreign wars pay for themselves?" he scoffed. "The thing about peasants is you have to keep them in a state of barely surviving, lest they get outlandish ideas. Before you know it, they'll be asking for a great charter, then they'll be demanding my head on the block. Oh no! As for that Robin Hood and those gang of thieves, the best thing for them is to make a public spectacle. Flogging, I say." Now, the problem with being so enwrapped in oneself is that one tends to live in one's own bubble, which dulls self-awareness, which means he never thought to look up. When the first rider passed beneath, Robin let fly, not an arrow to kill, but to pin the man's cloak to the saddle. The horse reared, the soldier was thrown back, and chaos erupted. From each flank the merry men sprang, Little John twirling his staff like a windmill while he advanced, the flamboyant Will Scarlet cutting rein with clean precision, forcing horses to halt. Some of the soldiers tried to flee, but found the rear blocked off by this Saracen. Donned in a dark studded leather jerkin and dark greens bordering on the black, this assassin from the other side of the world simply stood with a scimitar in each hand. He spoke little, and he didn't need to. His presence was enough to stop the sheriff's toadies in their tracks, though he wished they would resist. Robin hopped down from his perch, 4 men surrounding 20 in total disarray. "Good day to you, O High Sheriff. You carry a heavy burden. Allow us to relieve you of it." The sheriff's dour complexion turned crimson. "Hood, you'll hang for this. No, you'll face the will for this. I'll have you hung, drawn, and quartered. You'll—" A sword tip rotated under the sheriff's chin. "Maybe," grinned Robin, "but not today." There was a flash of silver, and the sheriff's trouser cords were relieved of their duty. The sheriff went to move, and immediately fell in a sprawl. The fighting was short, and soon enough the sheriff's guards were sat in a neat row under the oak, grumbling and feeling quite sorry for themselves. All the silver was upended into a pair of waiting sacks. Robin flicked a solitary coin with his thumb at the sheriff. "For your trouble, and to keep your men in ale while you explain to them how you lost the rest to the false king." The sheriff sneered, and Robin laughed. The merry men melted into the greenwood. Once they were sure they were out of sight, Little John clapped Robin on the back. "You know he'll come after you, twice as hard now." "Aye," replied Robin, "but isn't that half the fun?" The Maiden. It was a sunny morning in Sherwood, the kind of morning where the air smells of hawthorn blossom and streams run clear after a chilled night. Robin was walking the green paths alone that day. Nay, he was tracking. But he was not looking for game, nor seeking to make mischief with the sheriff and their heavy tax bags. He was following a song, faint at first, and hidden under the morning chorus of the surrounding wildlife. A woman's voice, light as a cooling mist, it threaded through the trees. He knew that voice, for it came from the fairest maiden of them all. Marian was no mere maid. In some accounts it was said she was a noble woman who walked away from her father's hall to follow Robin into the forest. In others she was a match for his bow and sword, and it was said that they battled for hours upon their first encounter, a huntress in her own might. But in all stories it always led to the same path, choosing the greenwood over gold. Robin found her in a sunlit clearing, sitting on a stump of felled oak. Dressed not in silk, but in forest green, bow by her side, preparing a rabbit. Red hair rippled over her shoulders and down the middle of her back, skin the colour of chalk milk. Her cheekbones shimmered the colour of pink rose. "Marian, O Lady of the Woods, you've been away too long," spoke Robin. She smiled, and eyes so blue that they bordered on silver regarded him. "You've been tormenting that high sheriff for so long, I'm surprised you noticed. There is such a price on your head that one would be rich enough to buy half of Nottingham. What do you think of that?" "Only half, my lady? It seems we'll have to work on that." Her smile faded, but her eyes never left his. "He's hunting you with twice the men, and twice the malice." "Then we'll meet him with thrice the cunning," Robin replied. She raised an eyebrow. "And when he catches you?" "Then I hope you'll be there to shoot the rope," countered Robin. As the rabbit cooked over a fire, they spent the afternoon loosing arrows at a carved round target on a knotted oak, each trying to outshoot the other. By dusk, with bellies full, the scores were even, though Robin would later swear that he had let her win. Before parting, the Maiden of the Woods pressed something into his hand, a silver token forged into the shape of an arrowhead. "For luck," she said, "and to come back to me." Robin danced the arrowhead over his fingers, as if he were hypnotizing himself. When he looked up, she was gone. Robin began to sing to himself as he gathered his belongings. But fortune bearing these lovers a spite, that soon they were forced to part. To the merry Greenwood then went Robin Hood, with a sad and sorrowful heart. No sooner had Robin slung his bow over his shoulder, than that faint voice, as sweet as morning, replied. Perplexed and vexed and troubled in mind, she dressed herself like a page, and ranged the wood to find Robin Hood, the bravest of men in that age. Legends are like rivers, beginning as streams with trickles of memory, scraps of truth, and over time they gather into something broader and deeper. Robin Hood is of course no different. Perhaps the most infamous outlaw in all of British folklore, the question beggars, was there ever a Robin Hood, or a Will Scarlet, or a Sheriff of Nottingham for that matter? The earliest known traces come not from a ballad, but from a court of law in 1225. A legal document mentions a person, or more accurately a fugitive outlaw called Robert Hod. While Robert Hod was declared an outlaw, there was no evidence that this meant he was a bandit. However, by the 1260s, the name Robe Hod was turning up often, sometimes as an alias attributed to outlaws. It would seem Robin Hood was becoming a symbol of criminality even before a legend was formed. Some historians believe that he was of noble birth and that he fought in the Crusades before returning to England to find his land seized by the local sheriff. Some say he was of the yeoman class, that is neither peasant nor noble, somewhere in the middle, one might say. What is known is that there really was a King Richard I, also known as the Lionheart, which is the often depicted period that Robin Hood is most closely popularised in. High sheriffs were also a part of English history, dating back as far as the post-conquest by the Normans. Sherwood Forest is a national nature reserve in Nottinghamshire, over 1,000 acres in size. But what of the man in green himself? Was he really a Saxon freedom fighter, resisting Norman lords after the conquest and given perceived stolen money back to the people? From the 14th century, the first Robin Hood ballads appear, and he is not always the noble outlaw of later tales. Rougher, crueler, with an air of ambiguity, robbing, fighting, and sometimes killing without mercy. What does stand out here is a hatred of corruption. During the Tudor period, a softer, more romanticised version of Robin Hood was formed and is largely the version we know and love today, stealing from the rich, giving to the poor, and sweeping Maid Marian off her feet. By the time of the Victorians, Robin was practically a saint of the forest, a green-clad knight of social justice. So, was he real? The truth is fragmented. Maybe Robin Hood is an alias, a title given to many an outlaw, multiple deeds woven as one. Maybe Robin was never a man, but a story people needed, or a beacon of false hope allowed to propagate by the powers that be. Whatever be the case, Robin Hood is a story about someone clever enough, bold enough, and brash enough to laugh in the face of authority, to live life free and on his terms under the green leaves. Whether he lived or not, the legend of Robin Hood tells us something important, that people in every age want to believe in justice, in rebellion against the greedy and tyranny, and the hope that the poor and helpless might laugh at the powerful and win. Maybe there is a little bit of Robin Hood in all of us, and thus will the legend be perpetuated for all recorded time. Robin Hood may never have loosed an arrow in Sherwood, locked swords with the corrupt Sheriff of Nottingham, or engaged in daring and romantic adventures with bravado for a maiden. But we all long for justice, perhaps today more than ever. We all wish someone might stand up against greed, corruption, cruelty, even when the odds look impossible. We all want to believe that in our communities, like within the Greenwood, there awaits a figure ready to even the scales. Throughout time he has changed, from rough outlaw to patriot, to noble hero and defender of the downtrodden. Today we long for someone who is all of these at once. That is why the legend persists and endures. Robin isn't so much a man but a mirror. He reflects the justice we crave, the freedom we imagine, and the laughter we need in the darkest of days. The greenwood remains, the oak stands tall within Sherwood, and if you listen carefully, in the hush of the forest you might hear the faint sound of singing, as if he and his merry men are still there, watching, waiting, the immortal outlaw who never dies. Thank you for walking with me through the Greenwood, where arrows fly, laughter echoes, and justice lives beneath the leaves. If you enjoyed today's story, follow Mythic Albion and leave a review. It helps others find their way in the forest. And if you listen closely, the forest always has more to tell. Next time, we leave the sunlight of Sherwood behind and step into the shadows, to cold caves and lonely moors where the whispers and laughter turn darker. We'll meet Black Annis, the iron-clawed hag of Leicestershire, and climb Pendle Hill where the wind still remembers the cries of the condemned. A tale of witches, fear, and the blurred line between superstition and survival. Until then, walk wisely, and don't stray too far from the path, because not every shadow in Albion is kind.